Hello and welcome back. Today we're at week 17 of the series that will cover days 105 to 111. Or if you have the edition of the Road Rising that follows the calendar, then you'll be looking at April 15th to April 21st. This week has been a real education for our pilgrim friend as he's recovering from his misadventures and now enjoying renewed fellowship with the folks at Rendezvous. Besides his grief over the passing of his friend Jonathan and his mentor, old Charlie, he's discovering that life on the trail is not always a walk in the park. He knows firsthand now what happens when you step off the trail that God has set before you. And to make matters worse, he's learning that even though the evil man, read Satan here, can't lay a hand on you, he does have followers who are not bound by such injunctions. Just as you and I can be hurt by the things the world throws up in our way, the pilgrim is coming to understand that there are things out there that don't just go bump in the night. There are clear and present dangers out there. And it's only by God's grace that we can avoid them, or if it comes to it, to defeat them. That lesson is underscored on day 110, which is April 20 in the Road Rising book. Listen to the experience from friend's point of view. Day 110, April 20. The morning was filled with the bustling sounds of activity as tents were taken down and supplies were packed away. Rendezvous had come to an end. Travelers were already beginning to file out of the camp, moving toward the west. I was preparing to go as well, but was in no hurry to leave this beautiful place. The brook trout taken from the nearby river had been especially delicious. I set out to catch just one more for breakfast. With a willow pole, a hook, and some fishing line, I looked for a likely place along the riverbank. I finally decided to wade out into the center of the wide but shallow stream. Just as I dropped my hook into the water, something between a scream and a roar split the air, coming from the far side of the river, away from the camp. I looked in that direction and saw a man standing at the water's edge, if indeed he was a man. He was clothed in animal skins, with a metal breastplate and a helmet. In his hand he held a huge sword, which he began swinging over his head as he stepped into the river toward me. I judged the distance quickly and saw at once that I would not outrun him. In fact, I only had time to raise my fishing pole in self-defense before he had reached me. The sword came down on the pole, easily severing it in half, but slowing its progress long enough for me to jump back. The training I had just finished with Andy was still fresh in my mind, and without thinking, I thrust the broken pole in my right hand directly at my attacker, catching him in the throat. It was enough to make him stop suddenly, drop the sword, and clutch at his throat in shock. There was no time for hesitation. Grabbing the sword, I held it in both hands and executed a forward thrust, connecting just below his breastplate. For just an instant, he seemed to be confused, not knowing whether to clutch his throat or his stomach. But in the next instant, all thought gave way as he fell dead, face down in the water. I still held the sword. Backing away, I soon found myself on the riverbank, now joined by several from the camp who had heard the roar. Suddenly, the far shore came alive as hundreds more like the one I had just killed stepped into the water and began advancing toward us. Now, I'd like to dispel a couple of misconceptions here. Number one, choosing to take this journey as a walk of faith does not make you immune from all the bad things that the world throws at you. In fact, by declaring your allegiance to Jesus Christ, you grab the attention of the kind of characters you don't want to meet in a dark alley. Number two, not choosing to take this journey does not make you immune from all the bad things the world throws at you. Does that make sense? I said at the very beginning of this series that the Switzerland option, unfortunately, is not available. When it comes to the forces of good and evil, there is no neutral ground. If you were not on this journey of faith, you'd still be susceptible to the dangers of the fallen world in which we live. The only difference is that you would be facing them alone. I would urge you to revisit the words of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 15. Now, if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you're living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Now, if you've already made that choice, good on you. Now look around you and see who the Lord would show you. Someone who needs to see the facts and act accordingly. Urge them to choose wisely, will you? God bless your journey. See you next time. Y'all come back now here. Once more, our pilgrim is learning the lesson of shortcuts. This time, though, it wasn't fear that drove him off the trail, but what looked like a logical choice.